Today we're going to review for quiz number 2. This quiz goes through lesson 523. Let's start with a problem like this. The directions are going to ask you to solve for the stated variable. Number 1. If you have negative 7x plus 6y is equal to 18, we have an equation that's in standard form and we want to solve for y. So if I ask you to find the slope of this equation, you would solve for y and find m and b. You could see m and b if it was in the form y equals mx plus b. So that's why we need to know how to do this, is we want to get y by itself. So we could see m and b if they ask us for that. Okay, so to get y by itself, I got to get rid of that negative 7x. So let's move it to the other side. I'm going to add 7x to both sides. My 7x's cancel out and I bring down my 6y. On the other side, I can't actually add 18 and 7x together, so I write 7x plus 18. Now I almost have y by itself. What's the opposite of multiplying by 6? Well, I'm going to divide by 6, but I'm going to divide everything by 6. And when I do that, I get y equals, I can't simplify 7 over 6, so I'm just going to pull that fraction out in front, times x plus 18 divided by 6 is 3. So I have my equation. Notice it's in the form y equals mx plus b now. I can see that my slope is 7 over 6 and my y-intercept is 3. So you might have a problem similar to that on your quiz today. All right, let's try this next one. Let's go ahead and turn the page. Number 2 says, is 242 a term in the sequence T of n is equal to 4n minus 30. If so, then if it is a term in the sequence, we want to know which term is it. Okay, now remember, in a sequence, we cannot have any numbers in the n column that are fractions or negatives. So in order for 242 to be a term, when I substitute it into the equation, if I get a fraction or a negative, then it is not a term. If I get a whole number, then I can say that it is a term. And when I solve for n, I'll know what term number it is. So let's take our equation, or our sequence. We have T of n is equal to 4n minus 30. Now our question is, where do I put 242? It says it's a term. Well, remember, n is the term number. T of n is your y column. That's where you list all the terms. So we want to put 242 in for T of n, not for n. So I'm going to replace this whole thing with 242. And I want to know, if I solve this equation for n, if I don't get a fraction or a decimal, then I can say n would be the term number. So, solve for n, we're going to add 30 to both sides. I get 4n, because my 30s cancel out, is equal to 272. Divide both sides by 4. Does 4 go in evenly? That's the question. When I take out my calculator and I divide that, I get 68. That is a positive number. That is a whole number. So in my n t of n chart, what that means is at term number 68, the value of that term is 242. So is 242 a term in this sequence? We could say yes, because we did not get a fraction or a decimal, and it is term number 68. So we answered both questions. Is it a term in the sequence? Yes. If so, which term is it? We found it right here. It's term number 68. So make sure you could do a problem like that on the quiz. Okay, we have a short one here. Let's go ahead and just add it to the bottom here. Number 3. The directions will say simplify. If I give you a monomial 4y to the third, and I multiply it by negative 2x squared y to the fifth, and I multiply it again by 6x to the fifth y. I'm multiplying 3 monomials together. Well, you take your coefficients and you multiply all 3 of them together. So it looks like I get negative 8 right here, and then negative 8 times 6. So let me go ahead, if you want me to, I can write that down. Negative 8 times 6. That's going to give me negative 48. Then you look and say, well, I don't have any x's here, but I do here. Let's go ahead and do our x's next. How many x's do I have here and here? I have 2 x's here and 5 x's here, so I have a total of 7 x's, because when I multiply like bases, I add the exponents. Then I do my y's. How many y's do I have? Well, I have 3 here, 5 here, and 1 here. Even though I can't see an exponent, I know there's really a 1 right here. So I have 3 plus 5 is 8, plus 1 more is 9. And I have multiplied those monomials together, and that is my answer. Okay, next problem. Okay, number 4. Suppose we have a ball and its rebound ratio is 0.82. We drop the ball (900 feet). What is the rebound height? Okay, so we have rebound ratio and we have the starting height, because that's where we dropped it from. So let's write down our formula to find the rebound height. Remember, we have a formula for that. To find the rebound height, what do we have to do? Well, when we have a starting point, which in this case is 900, what do we do to 900 to figure out what the rebound height is going to be? What have we done all along in our little XY charts? We multiply by the rebound ratio. Remember, we start with our starting height at 900, and we multiply by the rebound ratio, and that gives us a smaller number because we're multiplying by a decimal. So when we multiply, we get our rebound height of 738 feet. So we answered the question. When our rebound ratio is 0.82, the starting height is 900, our rebound height is 738, and that is a smaller number than 900, so that makes sense. Okay, moving on. We're going to solve the system using elimination. Now you guys had a little bit of trouble on this on the last test, so I definitely wanted to go over this again. Some of you are doing great on it, but some of you are having a little bit of trouble. So let's solve this system using elimination. Number 5. Suppose you have 5x plus 6y is equal to negative 11. And you have 3x plus y is equal to negative 4. We want to solve this system using elimination. So we look at these two equations. If we look at our x's, we would have to change both of those into 15. We'd have to multiply both equations by something. One of them would have to be 15 and one of them would have to be negative 15. If you look at your y's, we have 1y here and 6 here. How easy would it be to multiply this equation by a number and get something that will cancel out my y's? Could I change this y to a negative 6y so it will cancel with that positive 6 above it? We can. We can multiply both sides by negative 6. So what's our new system going to be? Well, I'm going to recopy the first equation. And our new equation is going to be, when I multiply here, I get negative 18x minus 6y is equal to, negative times a negative, that's positive 24. There is my new system. Now, when I add them together, I want to eliminate one of the variables. That's why this is called elimination method. So 5x minus 18x, that's going to give me negative 13x. These y's cancel out. And I have negative 11 plus 24 is positive 13. When I divide by negative 13 on both sides, I get x equals negative 1. Now, we're not done because remember, we're solving a system. We are looking for the point of intersection. So we found our x, we still have to find our y. So let's take what x equals and let's substitute it into one of these equations. I'll use the top equation. So I have 5 times x, which is negative 1, plus 6y is equal to negative 11. If I solve this, I have negative 5 plus 6y equals negative 11. And when I add 5 to both sides, I'm going to get 6y is equal to negative 6. When I divide by 6 on both sides, I get y equals negative 1. Notice I got negative 1 twice. That's kind of strange, but if you plug that point into both equations, it would check in both equations. So this is the intersection of those two lines. If I graph these two equations, they would cross at the point negative 1, negative 1. And we solve that using elimination. Okay, next problem. I feel like I went kind of fast on that, so if we need to pause for you guys to catch up, then do so now. Okay, find the next 3 terms in the sequence. That's what the directions are going to say next. Find the next 3 terms in the sequence. And then they are going to ask you, is it arithmetic sequence? Or is it a geometric sequence? Now, if you remember, arithmetic sequence means you add something or add or subtract something every time to get the next term. And geometric means you're going to multiply or divide by the same number every time to get the next sequence. So let's see what happens. Number 6. If you have 200 and then you have 186, 172, 158, and we want to find the next 3 terms. Well, what's happening? We're decreasing. So we're either subtracting something or we're dividing by something. Well, let's try subtracting first. If we take 200 and we subtract 186, The difference between those two numbers is 14. So we are subtracting 14. Well, what's the difference between 186 and 172? If I do that on my calculator, I also get a difference of 14. So I am subtracting 14 there also. If I subtract 14 here from 172, I get 158. So it looks like I'm subtracting 14 every time. So what is 158 minus 14? Well, we would get 144, and that would be the next term in the sequence. Subtract 14 again, and we get 130. Subtract 14 one more time, and we get 116. So we completed our next three terms in the sequence because we found our sequence generator. And you could say we're subtracting 14 or we're adding a negative 14. Since we're adding a negative 14, is this arithmetic sequence or geometric? Well, since we're adding or subtracting, we would say this is an arithmetic sequence. That means it's linear, right? If we're adding or subtracting, that means that's our slope. Okay, now we're going to have another system problem. Let's solve this system using substitution method. Okay, number 7. If you have x equals negative 8y minus 5, and you have 4x minus 3y is equal to 50. Now the reason why they're telling us to use substitution on this one is this variable is already solved by itself. So since x equals all of this, we're going to take all of this and we're going to substitute it into the x into the other equation. And that will combine our two equations together. So what's our new equation? We're going to use this equation right here. We're going to say 4 times x, but what does x equal? X equals negative 8y minus 5. Then you're going to subtract 3y equals 50. You're going to just rewrite the rest of that equation. Okay, now we have one equation, and we just solve for y, and we will be halfway done. Okay, let's distribute that 4. We get negative 32y. Distribute the 4 again, we get negative 20. Minus 3y is equal to 50. Okay, when we simplify that, we have negative 32y and a negative 3y. So when we add those together, we get negative 35y minus 20 is equal to 50. To get y by itself now, I have to add 20 to both sides. And I get negative 35y is equal to 70. When I divide both sides by negative 35, I get y equals negative 2. Now I'm not done because remember, I need to find an ordered pair. So where do I put my negative 2? I put it right here because that's my y value. Now it's easy to find the x value because you see this equation right here is already solved for x. So let's plug in negative 2 to this y right here. We have x equals negative 8 times y, which is negative 2, minus 5. Go ahead and simplify that. We get negative 8 times negative 2 is 16. And 16 minus 5 is 11. So we get the point 11, negative 2. And if you took that point and you plugged it into both of the equations, it would work in both equations. It would make sense in both equations. And there we have solving a system of equations using the substitution method. All right, we have 2 more problems. Number 8. In fact, the directions are the same for both of these, but I'll just write it once. Multiply something that looks like this. If you have 8x minus 3 times 2x plus 5. I am multiplying 2 binomials together, so I'm going to use distributive property. If you like to use generic rectangles, you can do that, but I'm going to use distributive property. So you're going to take this 8x and you're going to multiply it by everything on in the other parentheses. So 8x times 2x would be 16x squared. And 8x times positive 5 would be positive 40x. Then you take the second term and you're going to distribute that. Using multiplication, you get negative 6x, and here you get negative 15. Now, notice, even though the directions don't say simplify, we automatically simplify these if you have like terms, and I do. So I get 16x squared, and then 40 minus 6, that would be a positive 34x minus 15. And so when I multiplied my 2 binomials together, I ended up with a trinomial answer. Last problem, number 9. What if you have a monomial and you multiply it by a trinomial? 2x squared plus 10x minus 3. I want to go ahead and multiply this together. I take this negative 6x and I distribute it to everything on the inside using multiplication. So negative 6x times 2x squared. So I'll do my numbers first. Negative 6 times 2 would be negative 12. And how many x's do I have if I multiply x times x squared? Well, I have 1 x here and I have 2 x's here. So how many do I have total? I have a total of 3. What is negative 6x plus 10x? Well, negative 6 times 10 is negative 60, and x times x is x squared. Last one. Negative 6x times negative 3 would be a positive 18, and then the x doesn't change. So when I multiplied my monomial times a trinomial, I still have a trinomial, it just looks a little different. Okay, these are the types of problems that you need to know how to do for the quiz. And so hopefully it helped to go over these problems. Make sure you put your phone in your backpack. Put your backpack against the wall. Spread out in the room and grab one of those folders and a calculator. Put up your little privacy folder and you may write on the quiz. Good luck. That's all for today.